Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So 'twas the night before the 2025 draft. It is time for me to give my final mock draft 8.0. I have done 8 of these things ever since I think the first one was in like July of 2024. So we have talked a shit ton about this class, and now it's time for me to give my final predictions. When looking at mock drafts, this shit's hard because one guy goes extremely high, like a Beckett Seneca last year, and it completely blows up everything. So if I get 5 picks right on this, I'll be absolutely ecstatic. Here is the updated draft board, the final draft board, so you know who's picking when. And let's get into it. Again, this is what I think that these teams are going to do, not what I personally would do. Feel free to go watch my top 40 prospects video. And up first is my New York Islanders. No shocker here. I am going with Matthew Schaefer. I think that he is going to be the pick. When looking at him, 6'2", skates like the wind. Maybe not the largest sample size, but most scouts, like 9 out of 10 scouts, are in agreement. He is the best prospect in this draft. You look at Matthew Darche coming from Tampa Bay, seeing Victor Hedman firsthand, what having that franchise defenseman can do for your team. Obviously, Tampa also has like everything everywhere else, but I think you go with Matthew Schaefer, especially for this team that has not had a franchise defenseman basically for my entire life. Just lock him up, and it looks like he might be traded Noah Dobson. By the time you're watching this, Noah Dobson might be off the team, so get Matthew Schaefer. He is going to be your franchise defenseman, one of the youngest guys in this draft, and just oozes with so much potential, given that skating ability. Should be a top 10 defenseman for a very long time. At number 2, I am going with I'm going with Michael Misa. I think that the smoke is not going to materialize, the Anton Franson smoke that is building for San Jose. I think my career is just going to select Michael Misa. Don't overthink this. I'm not saying there isn't a chance that Anton Franson could be a better player than Michael Misa, but I personally have Misa as my number 2. I think he has a way higher floor, just considering what this guy does just across the board. He's just very good at everything, and as a result, had 62 goals and 134 points in his draft year. He's been on the radar for a while after getting exceptional status. Michael Misa would be probably the best second-line center in no time, or a top 3 second-line center, because of course there's those two in Edmonton. But yeah, he'd be an amazing second-line center for the San Jose Sharks. Lock him up, give you Celebrity and Michael Misa for the next 15 years, and you're in a pretty good spot. At 3rd overall, at this point, this is also looking like pretty much locked in, our top 3 at least. Anton Franson, 3rd to the Chicago Blackhawks. I think it makes a lot of sense. Definitely in terms of a physical build as well as play style. Plays a little bit different than a Connor Bedard as your number 2 center. Definitely more of a heavy guy that utilizes his body to body grown men like he did in the 2nd-tier Swedish League. A very, very special shot. That 1-2 punch in terms of the goal-scoring ability is going to be off the charts, and I think Chicago will be going with Anton Franson or Michael Misa if San Jose goes Anton Franson 2nd overall. So the draft really starts at 4th overall, and I'm still going with Caleb Desnoyers. I know that there's Brady Martin smoke, and I understand that. I think if they are going to select Brady Martin, they will move back some picks. So I'm going with Desnoyers. Obviously, I'm not penciling in some kind of trades. Even after the Peterka trade, he's a winger. They still need a legit second-line center for the future. You cannot be relying on Barrett Hayden to be your championship-level second-line center. And I think Desnoyers, maybe not the highest offensive ceiling, but considering the wingers that they have now with JJ Peterka and Gunther, Peterka, Schmaltz, Keller, and especially Desnoyers is such a good fit because those guys that I just listed, as well as Logan Cooley, not the best defensively. Caleb Desnoyers is known to be probably the best two-way forward in this draft. So select Desnoyers. In terms of size fit behind Logan Cooley, it makes all the sense in the world. In terms of play style, more so defensive, responsible hockey, it makes a lot of sense. Caleb Desnoyers, 4th overall to the Utah Mammoth. Did I say the Utah Hockey Club? Utah Mammoth. Nashville, 5th overall. Porter Martone. I think that Barry Trotz ends up going with the best player available because although you probably would want a center here, if you believe Martone's a better player, especially given Nashville, I always say it has a large quantity of prospects. They don't really have any other blue chips at any position. So I think you just go with the best player. And I think a lot of people for that is Porter Martone. As long as Barry Trotz is not too concerned about the skating, Porter Martone, in my opinion, has the 2nd best ceiling in this entire draft. You select Porter Martone to be your franchise forward because if he hits, you could have one of the best power forwards in the NHL for a very long time. So give me Porter Martone, the Nashville Predators. At 6th overall, I'm going to go Jake O'Brien to the Philadelphia Flyers. I think Danny Briere gets the best passer in the draft to potentially pair him with the Matvei Michkov. You can maybe argue that his Hagen should be the pick here. I think a little bit of a bigger guy like O'Brien, 6'2", only 170 pounds right now. If he fills out, he could be really special to play with kind of a smaller guy in Matvei Michkov. And I think you bet on the raw physical tools of Jake O'Brien, and you see if he eventually pans out to play with Matvei Michkov. At 7th overall, this is where I do have James Hagen's go. The James Hagen slide stops, whether it's the Boston Bruins, whether it's my New York Islanders potentially trading up to get him. Let me manifest that. I have Hagen's going here. Boston Bruins have clearly watched a lot of Hagen's, I can imagine, or else their entire scouting department should be fired because it's a short drive away. But yeah, James Hagen's playmaking center. You give him 2 to 3 years to develop and then put him on the same line as David Pastrnak, and I think he can be a legit number 1 center. He was number 6 in my personal rankings. I have not soured on him, but I am just a little bit lower on him than some others. And I think that as a result, not of my own personal rankings, but I think across the board, he's kind of slipped a little bit. But I think Boston, who badly needs a center going forward, takes him at 7th overall and are very excited to do so. At 8th overall, the Seattle Kraken. I've had Redeem Murka penciled in here like for the past 3 to 4 months, but I ain't going with him. I'm going with Jackson Smith. I think Jackson Smith is a guy that has really rised, especially in the last month or two. And although you maybe want the right-handed defenseman, it's not like Seattle has some great left-handed defenseman prospects either. Riker Evans is like 23 years old. He's not really a prospect at this point. Jackson Smith, I think, has the much higher ceiling. And I think you could look at Jackson Smith and say, okay, that's going to be Vince Dunn's replacement as our top pair defenseman in 3 to 4 to 5 years or something like that. Jackson Smith, the physical tools, also in the WHL, so they probably scouted him a lot. I think Jackson Smith is probably the second defenseman off the board. I have him going to the Seattle Kraken. At 9th overall, the Buffalo Sabres. I have Redeem Murka going here. Even after they got Mike Kesselring, they still badly need right-handed defensemen across the board. And Redeem Murka definitely checks that box at 6'6". Imagine their defense core with Rasmus Dahlin, Murka, Kesselring, Owen Power. Rasmus Dahlin would be the smallest guy, and he's still 6'3", be 2 inches shorter than Mike Kesselring at 6'5", and then Murka and Power at 6'6". They would be some absolute trees. And yeah, I think Murka is definitely more of a defensive than an offensive guy. So being able to pair him with either a Dahlin or Power, that would really solidify their top 4 going forward. And I think it makes all the sense in the world to select Redeem Murka if he's still available at 9th overall. At 10th overall, Anaheim. I think this is where Brady Martin kind of goes. I think that he has been losing a little bit of steam. He peaked like U18's draft combine, but it has going down. It wouldn't shock me if he goes higher, but I think really only Utah or Boston is really where I could see him going. I don't think Nashville or Philadelphia, they should be swinging a lot more for a higher upside guy. But Anaheim, Verbeek, based on his recent trades and signings, guys like Gudis, Trouba, Chris Kreider, definitely looks for more of that physical presence, and Brady Martin definitely brings that. Only 6 foot, but like 190 pounds, gets compared to Sam Bennett. So I think for Anaheim, who have potentially their top 2 centers or a lot of high-end skill forwards like Carlson, Seneca, McTavish, you go with a guy like Brady Martin that you know you're going to get a very reliable middle sixer at least. For the foreseeable future, at 11th overall, the Pittsburgh Penguins, Roger McQueen. The reports have been coming out that they really like Roger McQueen. They were gushing over him at the draft combine. Makes all the sense in the world. I would endorse this pick, even though I'm not that high on McQueen. I think I had him 10th in my rankings. The upside's definitely there. And for Pittsburgh, they should be swinging for the fences. I've talked about this so much throughout the process. This isn't good. These picks, 11th and 12th, are not going to make or break their rebuild. It's going to be when they're selecting top 5 the next 3 seasons after this. So take a shot on Roger McQueen. If he ends up busting, if the back injuries don't go well, it's not the end of the world. But if you hit on a Roger McQueen and then you have those high picks, you could be looking at one of the most young, exciting cores in the entire NHL. Going forward, at 12th, I'm going to go with Victor Eklund, though. A little bit of a safer pick. You swing for McQueen, and then you also get Eklund that I think still has a pretty solid ceiling. He was 9th on my top 40 list. But yeah, Victor Eklund, hard-nosed, 5'11" guy. Dubas is not afraid to select his European players, and I think he'd just be a staple of their top 6 for the next 15 years. And at 12th overall in this draft, sounds good to me. That'd be a pretty damn good pick. Detroit at 13th overall, Justin Carbono. I think he'd add some much-needed pace, skating, and goal scoring to that middle 6 in Detroit. I really like Detroit's top line, but after that, especially in a couple years when Patrick Kane truly starts to regress, I'm a little bit scared in terms of the scoring there. Carbono would be a very solid add in terms of that. Being able to play with a guy like Marco Kasper down the line really intrigues me. So Detroit picks up a really nice winger in Carbono because the top-end defensemen are kind of gone at this point. 14th, Lynden Lakavic to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They don't really need a left-handed defenseman, which would be Kashan Herson probably. There's no right-handed defensemen that are really on the same tier as Lakavic. So I think you just add another big winger like they did last year with Caden Lindstrom, but Caden Lindstrom, of course, did deal with those back injuries. So you swing for Lakavic, who was highly productive on a dogshit Moose Jaw team, and maybe hits. If he plays with Fantilli and Kent Johnson, that could be scary in terms of the physical profile of that line. I think it's very intriguing. Lakavic to the Columbus Blue Jackets. At 15th overall, we have Carter Bear to the Vancouver Canucks. I would absolutely love Carter Bear. He's very high in my personal rankings. I know that they maybe want to draft more so of a traditional center, but if Carter Bear is there, they should not think about it twice. They should select him. In my opinion, he's a top 10 pick at 15th. This would be an absolute steal and add some much needed tenacity and high-end offense that Vancouver badly needs. And I think he's going to be NHL ready relatively soon, given his high motor, given his high compete level and skills. Carter Bear to the Vancouver Canucks. At 16th and 17th, I'm going to just do it at once. Cam Reed and Braden Coots. Cam Reed, I think, would be a damn good left-handed defenseman, probably on the third pair, second power play for the Montreal Canadiens. I know that they have Caden Goulet, I know that they have Lane Hudson, but Cam Reed is the guy that apparently they like a decent amount. And as for Braden Coots, could potentially be a second-line center, maybe more so of an amazing third-line two-way center that can really bring some physicality despite not being the biggest guy. These picks, I would try to move up if I'm Montreal or just trade this for more so help, especially if this is the case where guys that they really want, like Lakavic, Bear, some of the other defensemen are gone off the board. But this wouldn't be the end of the world. These would be two guys that don't really have star potential, but would really complete their rebuild and just they'd be set going forward in terms of adding a very good role left-handed defenseman and potentially an awesome third-line center, low-end second-line center. At 18th overall, Calgary, go with Benjamin Kindle. I think I've been mocking him here the last 3 to 4 times. Plays for the Calgary Hitmen, high-end upside, 99 points, 65 games, is a little bit undersized, but Calgary's not afraid to go undersized, and he has high offensive upside. Like take the offensive upside. Calgary should not be selecting some high floor guy here. Take a swing. Ben Kindle makes all the sense in the world. He probably wouldn't want to leave in a couple of years or something like that. Take Kindle, lock him up, and he could be special offensively. 19th overall, St. Louis, Kashan Herson going here. They get the smash mouth left-handed defenseman to play on that second pair, probably behind a Philip Broberg for the next decade and a half. I think it makes a lot of sense when looking at St. Louis and their defense core. They don't really need any forwards. They're loaded in terms of young forwards. So Kashan Herson, I think it makes a lot of sense. Next up, 20th overall, Logan Hensler. I think Hensler, if he's there at 20th, or another guy we'll talk about that's a right-handed defenseman, I think they take one of those guys, considering this pick they got from trading David Jiricek. They still have a glaring need at right-handed defense going forward, considering they're only like main guy on the right side. Well, they have Dante Faber, who they're going to resign, but then Severson's like already 30 years old and locked up long-term. He's eventually going to start to regress. So you get a guy like Hensler that I still think is a pretty good prospect. Did not really have the draft year that we were anticipating, but should be a pretty effective second pair, and a 20th overall as a second round pick that you got in the Jiricek trade. That'd be solid work by Columbus. 21st overall, give me Cole Rashny to the Ottawa Senators. I think he'd add a unique feature to their middle six in terms of puck skills, passing, and playmaking. Ottawa's middle six more so now does have a decent amount of skill, but is more so like smash mouth physical. Guys like Batherson, Zetterlund, Cousins, Gregg. I think Rashny would offer a nice mix, a nice diversity within that middle six. 92 points this year in the WHL. I would like Rashny to Ottawa a decent amount. 22nd, Colin Potter, the best skater in this draft, goes to the Philadelphia Flyers. Danny Briere, an undersized NHL player that was doubted throughout his career, takes a little bit of an undersized guy at Colin Potter at 5'10", but the skating is just so damn elite, and Philadelphia needs high-end difference makers within that forward core. They don't really have a ton right now, and if Colin Potter hits with his skating ability, he could be something very, very special. 23rd overall, Blake Fidler. Actually was, fun fact, born in Nashville. Then he shortly after moved to Texas. But hometown kid gets drafted by the Nashville Predators. He's basically like a better Andrew Gibson, who they have in their prospect pool right now. I like Blake Fidler a decent amount. Very, very good defensively. I'm sure Barry Trotz likes his tape a fair amount and does have some offensive upside, where I think at 23rd overall, that'd be a pretty damn good pick. At 24th overall, Malcolm Spence to the Los Angeles Kings. More of a high floor guy, soon to be NHL ready, in my opinion, for the Los Angeles Kings. You can plug him in 2 to 3 years. He can play a pro style physical game. Makes a lot of sense for them as they continue to try to win now and potentially win before Kopitar and Doughty retire. At 25th overall, the Chicago Blackhawks took Vaklav Nestrasil. They take a swing at a guy that I really liked, that I had like 22nd on my board. 6'5" winger. You put him with Bedard or Frundell as a big physical winger with an extremely high motor. I think the upside, both in terms of his physicality and his overall skill, very underrated playmaker, I think could be special for Chicago and really add something that they don't quite have in their prospect pool, at least forward-wise. Nestrasil, I think he's going to go decently high. Prepare yourself for the Nestrasil Rise. 26th overall, Nashville, yet again on the board. Milton Gastron. This is a Barry Trotz player, two-way Swedish center. Maybe not the highest upside, but at that point, that's why you drafted Porter Martone 5th overall. You get a guy like Gastron that I think is going to be a low-end second-line center. High-end third-line center, 27th overall, Henry Stevich. Washington, the one part of their prospect pool that they're maybe lacking is right-handed defense. They have very good forwards. They have Cole Hudson, of course, on the left side. Henry Stevich, just a solid two-way right-handed defenseman. Makes sense for the Washington Capitals pipeline. Then for the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets at 28th overall, I'm sticking with the guy that I had last time here for them, that being Bill Zanin from Canada. That's an important factor when the Winnipeg Jets are drafting. Has a lot of skill, speed, physicality, where I think you're going to be able to insert him relatively soon into their lineup in 2 to 3 years for, again, a win-now team like the Winnipeg Jets. 29th overall, Josh Ravensbergen. I think that they go with a goaltender potentially here. Kochetkov is just not proven enough to me that he's going to be a legit starter, good starter in the NHL, more so of a 1B guy. So take a guy like Bergen. Obviously, he's not going to be ready for like 4 to 5 years, but they have such a young core under the age of 25 that he fits with that. Maybe not right now, but anybody that their draft's not going to be ready for like 2 to 3 years. Ravensbergen has the potential to be that starter that they're looking for down the line. And again, Carolina has a decade, 12-year window at this point. At 30th overall, Sasha Boymedian going to the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks probably would have really liked Stevich considering he's a right-handed defenseman, but I think Boymedian makes a lot of sense as a 6'2", smooth skating, left-handed defenseman to add within their prospect pool, but they got to get some right-handed defensemen relatively soon. 31st overall, the Philadelphia Flyers. Jack Murtaugh, when looking at Murtaugh, 53 points in 56 games this year for the U.S. National Team Development Program. Very good skater. And as I always talk about with him, August 22nd birthday, one of the youngest guys in this draft. Decently high upside, as well as an okay floor for the Philadelphia Flyers. And then lastly, for the Calgary Flames from the Matthew Tkachuk trade, Jack Nesbitt, 6'4", 64 points in 65 games. If he can work on his skating, if his skating can improve, he could be a decently special player. And again, for Calgary, take a shot on him. And also he's Canadian. So yeah, take a shot on Jack Nesbitt. It could potentially work out very well. But yeah, here is the full mock drafts. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about it? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? What are some trades that you think might potentially happen? I hope that we finally get some goddamn trades. I hope Shakens happens, of course. Thank you guys for, of course, following along with me throughout this entire process. It's been wild. It's been wild, and it's crazy that we're less than 24 hours out at this point. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.